You are here now, not by chance. Not by accident, but because something in your soul was quietly calling for this. Maybe it's been whispering for a while, maybe the world has been too loud to hear it, but now, in this moment, you can feel the space, you can feel the shift begin. Let everything else fall away, the unfinished thoughts, the weight you didn't realize you were carrying, the names, the roles, the noise. You don't have to hold anything right now. You don't have to be anything, just breathe, slowly, like the ocean, like leaves falling. In a forest where no one is watching, like the quiet between heartbeats, there is no pressure here. No judgment. No race to understand. No finish line to cross. These are not just stories, they are mirrors, each one reflecting a part of your spirit that may have been hidden beneath the surface. You won't need to remember every word, you won't need to try, because the stories that are meant for you will stay. Like light on still water, like a feather caught in your breath, like a dream you remember, not because it was loud, but because it was true. Zen does not explain. It does not argue. It does not beg to be understood. It simply invites you into the space between thoughts, the space where peace lives, the space where you remember what you've always known. Before words, before wounds, before the need to be right, there was only awareness, and now, you return. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Feel the muscles in your face soften, your shoulders sink, your belly rise and fall. Let your attention follow your breath as if it were a river carving gently through ancient rock, slow, patient, eternal. You do not need to try to relax, you are already relaxing. You do not need to try to understand Zen, you already remember it. In the chapters to come, you will meet monks who give everything away, sages who remain silent under accusation, travelers who discover truth at the edge of cliffs. Each story is short, but its echo, if you listen with your spirit, will linger for lifetimes. You will not be told what to believe, you will not be asked to agree, only this: let go, let yourself hear, not just with your ears, but with the quiet places inside that have waited so long to be seen. Let this stillness hold you like soft earth under bare feet, like moonlight over a calm lake. Let this be your return to simplicity. Presence. Now, and now, let the first bell sound, let the first shift take root. Let the first story find you. We begin with an empty cup. We begin by pouring everything out. There is a quiet room in the mountains, wooden floor. Open paper doors. A small cup rests on a low table, steam curls up from a pot of tea. You sit across from the master. He looks ordinary, not young, not old. You notice the silence before he speaks, you notice your own heart, already searching for answers. You have come here because you're tired of not knowing, tired of chasing truths that slip through your hands, tired of teachers who contradict each other. Tired of your mind talking louder than your spirit. You think, this master will explain it all. You think, this will be the moment everything changes. You think, now I will understand. The master lifts the teapot, begins to pour, the cup fills. He keeps pouring, tea rises to the rim, spills over the sides, begins soaking the table, begins dripping to the floor. You blink, confused, you reach out, panicking a little. Stop, it's overflowing. The master sets the teapot down, smiles gently. He says, exactly. You want to ask what he means, but you already know, not intellectually, but in the hollow of your chest. You came here full of ideas, full of opinions, full of what you thought wisdom should sound like, and in that fullness, there was no space left to receive. In Zen, the cup is you, and you cannot be filled unless you are willing to be emptied. This is the first lesson, and perhaps the hardest. Because to let go of what you know feels like death to the part of you that clings. We don't just hold on to knowledge. We hold on to identity. Pride. Being right. To being someone. We build shrines out of certainty, but every shrine becomes a cage. The master invites you to sit with the cup. Hold it. Notice it empty, and instead of asking to be filled again, you are asked to stay in the emptiness. Can you do that? Can you sit without reaching for the next answer? Can you pause the hunger for meaning long and not feel peace beneath the questions? It takes time, days, weeks, sometimes years. Recognize that what you believed was often the very thing in the way. See that knowledge can be armor, but truth requires nakedness. To feel that silence is not the absence of wisdom, but its source. You begin noticing your habits, how you grasp for conclusions, how discomfort rushes in when there's no clear next step, how quickly the mind fills in gaps with stories it learned long ago. You start to see that every time you interrupt the stillness with, "I know," you are spilling tea that was never yours to pour. And so, slowly, you allow your cup to remain empty, not because you gave up, but because you are learning to receive. The master speaks less and less, you ask fewer questions. One day, you speak not at all, and in that silence, something opens. You feel the sky in your chest, you hear wind as if it were breathing through you. You look at the cup, and you do not want to fill it, you want to be it, still, humble, ready. One night, under the pale moon, you sit alone with the cup, and it strikes you, not as metaphor, but as revelation. I have always been full of seeking, never full of presence. You let your thoughts spill out like the tea on that first day, and you watch them disappear into the earth. You do not need to catch them, you do not need to explain them, the ground accepts everything. So does the moment. You do not graduate from this lesson that it will return again and again. Every time you cling to knowing, you close the door, but now, you know how to open it. By surrender. By softness. By saying, "Empty me." Again. Reflection now, breathe, ask yourself, gently, what am I holding on to that no longer serves me? What have I convinced myself I know that might be blocking grace? There is no shame here, only inquiry, only space. You don't have to let go all at once, you only have to loosen your grip. The cup doesn't struggle to empty. It simply tips, and the rest happens on its own. The first story is complete, but its echo is still with you. You have made space now, and in that space, the next story will gently unfold. It is not about knowing. It is about listening. It is about what cannot be answered. That we now step into the sound of one hand clapping. You are walking in the temple garden, moss underfoot, the sound of wind in the bamboo. A quiet morning, the master approaches. He looks into your eyes, and speaks just one line. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Then he turns, and walks away. You laugh. A little confused. It's clearly a riddle. A trick of some kind. So you begin, you sit beneath the trees, you think, you press your hands together, then try with one. You move it through the air, slap it against your leg, wave it near your ear, but nothing sounds right, nothing sounds like truth. Still, you try, you list possibilities, you journal, you ask other monks, they just smile. The master says nothing more. Each time you approach him, he bows in silence, as if the question had never been asked, and yet, it lingers, like a note you can't hear but feel in your chest. Days pass, you grow frustrated, you feel foolish, you want to shout, "Just tell me the answer." But no one in Zen will ever do that, because there is no answer, only you. And what remains when answers fall away? One night, you sit by the koi pond. A single ripple moves across the surface, you close your eyes, and the question returns. What is the sound of one hand clapping? But something is different now. You no longer need to fix it and no longer need to make it make sense. You just let it echo, and echo, and echo. It begins to dissolve something in you. A hunger. A grasping. A need to wrap life in conclusions. You begin to notice how much of your world has been built on trying to solve everything. Trying to define love. To explain loss. To package God into something that fits a sentence, and suddenly, it feels absurd, not in a mocking way, but in a liberating one. The mind wants a beginning, middle, end. The spirit only wants stillness. The mind wants to label. The spirit only wants to listen. The mind claps with two hands. The spirit hears the silence in one. And so you sit, each day. And no longer trying to win. You breathe, you feel, you wait, you let the question rest inside you like a seed, and like all sacred seeds, it opens in silence, not through force. The master sees you again. You bow. He bows back. Neither of you speaks, neither of you needs to, because some truths are not meant to be spoken. Some truths, like the sound of one hand clapping, are only heard when the need to explain has fallen completely away. Reflection now. Breathe again, softly. Slowly, ask yourself, gently, where in my life am I chasing answers that were never meant to be found? Can I make space for not knowing, for mystery, for sacred silence? What if you don't need to resolve everything? What if you are allowed to live the question instead of kill it with conclusions? Let the question become a friend, not a burden. Let it hum in the background of your being, soft, subtle, always guiding you deeper inward. You do not need to answer the sound of one hand, you only need to hear what the silence around it reveals. The story ends, the mystery continues, and now, we shift to something even more profound, something that reminds you of the one thing no one can ever steal: the moon cannot be stolen. The night is quiet, not because there is no sound, but because peace has taken root inside you. You walk through the forest with nothing but the moon above. The path is simple. No destination, just presence. That you've left the temple for a while, to find silence in the wilderness. To hear your own soul again. The crickets sing. A cool breeze dances between branches. You carry no gold. No food, just a robe, a staff, and your stillness. You come to a small cabin, abandoned, it seems. You decide to rest there for the night. You set your staff down, fold your robe neatly, and lie beneath the stars. But sometime near midnight, you hear footsteps, cracking twigs. The door creaks open. A man enters. His face is sharp with hunger, eyes darting, jaw clenched. A thief. He sees you, freezes, then growls, "Give me your valuables." You sit up slowly, meet his gaze with calm eyes. "I have nothing," you say gently, "only this robe." And you hold it out to him, not with fear, not with resentment, but with peace. He takes it, stunned. Doesn't speak, turns and runs. Now, you sit there, naked, in the moonlight, the air cold against your skin, the night quiet again, and you smile, looking up. You whisper to no one in particular, "Poor man, that if only I could have given him the moon." That's all. That's the story, but it echoes like a bell in your bones, because you realize, there is a kind of wealth that no one can steal. A kind of peace that exists when you no longer measure life by possessions, protection, or pride. How much of your energy has gone into defending what was never truly yours? How many hours have you spent worrying about what could be taken? Reputation, success, control. How much of your identity has been built around having rather than being? The monk gave away his robe because he had already given up attachment. He smiled because nothing was lost. He pitied the thief, because the thief took only what was visible, never realizing the monk's true treasure was invisible. There's something unshakable that lives inside you. A core, a stillness, a light. It doesn't wear clothes. It doesn't need locks or lock screens. It can't be stolen, no matter how much the world tries. And once you touch it, once you rest in it, you are free. You begin to look differently at your life. You see the objects around you, but now you ask, do I own them, or do they own me? You look at your opinions. Do they serve truth, or are they armor? You even look at your name, your roles, your past, and quietly wonder, who was I before all of this, and am I still that? Beneath it all, the monk had nothing, and he smiled, because emptiness, when fully embraced, reveals fullness, not the fullness of things, but the fullness of being. You walk back through the forest days later. You wear your robe again, but it feels lighter, not because it's physically different, but because your attachment to it has vanished. You pass travelers on the road. One curses, one begs, one boasts. You nod kindly to them all. None of it sticks to you, because now you carry something deeper than words, the kind of wealth that does not rust, the kind of moonlight that no hand can touch. Reflection. Let your breath slow again, let your shoulders drop. Ask yourself, what have I been afraid to lose? And what would happen if I did lose it? Would I still be me? What do you truly own that no one can take from you? That is your wealth. Your temple, your moon. When we stop defending, we begin glowing. When we stop grasping, we begin rising. When we stop fearing loss, we finally touch what was never separate to begin with. The moonlight does not belong to the monk, but it lives in him, and now, it lives in you. This story ends without drama, without punishment, without revenge, just light, and quiet, and the awareness that you are already enough. And so, we walk forward, not heavier, but lighter, not richer, but freer. Into a story about burdens, not the ones we carry in our hands, but the ones we carry in our hearts. Next, we cross the river, and ask, what are you still holding that should have been put down long ago? There are burdens you carry that no one can see, but your spirit feels every ounce of them. and some, were never yours to carry in the first place. Point 2 Monks walk along a dusty road, their robes soft with dust, their sandals worn thin. Point 1 is older, his pace steady, his eyes calm, the other, younger, curious, eager, full of questions he hasn't asked. They walk in silence, as many monks do. But their silence is not emptied. It is shared. Hours pass, the road bends. A river appears, swollen with recent rains. On the riverbank stands a woman, cloaked in fine silk, unable to cross, her shoes soaked, frustration in her breath. She sees the monks, pleads, "Can you help me? I can't cross alone." The younger monk freezes. Their vows are clear, never touch a woman. That he looks to the elder, expecting refusal, but the elder steps forward, bows slightly, and without hesitation, lifts the woman into his arms. That he carries her across the river, sets her down gently, bows again, and continues walking. The woman thanks him softly, but he's already moving, already back on the path. The younger monk hurries to catch up. He says nothing at first, but his thoughts swirl. He glances sideways at the elder, waiting for some explanation. None comes. Minutes pass, then hours, and finally, unable to hold it in, he bursts, "How could you? You know the rule. We're not supposed to touch women, and you carried her." The elder stops, turns, looks at him with calm eyes, then says, simply, "I put her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" And just like that, the truth pierces through. The younger monk was not carrying the woman with his hands, but with his mind, his judgment, his rules, his resentment. That he had built a prison out of what was already gone. And so do we. How many people are you still carrying in your mind? An ex, a parent, a friend who betrayed you, a stranger who hurt you. How many moments do you replay again and again, as if holding on to them could rewrite the past? How many times have you done what you thought was right, only to find yourself resentful that someone else broke the rules and walked away free? Sometimes it's not the event that burdens us. It's the story we attach to it, the righteousness, the shame, the inner courtroom that never closes. And the deeper truth is this: judgment is just another weight, even when it's dressed as morality, even when it feels justified, because even being right can poison your PC if you're gripping it too tightly. The elder monk was free not because he broke a rule, but because he had no attachment to the rule's appearance. That he saw only a person in need, and he responded from compassion, not ego. Then he let it go completely. No justification, no guilt, no story. He simply returned to walking. You think back to your own river crossings, moments when you did something, then carried the memory for days, weeks, years, not the action itself, but the guilt, the judgment. The imagined voices in your head. What if you could put it down? What if peace meant no longer dragging old events into the present moment? You may still remember, but you don't have to carry. You may still learn, but you don't have to punish. Forgiveness is not always about others. Often, it's about laying down what you once thought was noble to carry. You look at your heart and you see her standing there, the woman at the river, not her, exactly, but a symbol, a person, a moment, a judgment you've carried for too long, that you've crossed many rivers since. But her presence has lingered, and now, it's time to let go, not because she needs it, but because you do. Reflection. Take a breath, notice what tightens in your chest when you think of the past. Ask yourself, who or what am I still carrying? What burden no longer belongs in my hands? What memory can be released, not erased, but laid gently to rest? You do not need to forget, only stop dragging it forward. You've crossed the river. It's okay to keep walking, and now, with one burden lighter, we move forward into another story of letting go, but this time, it's not a person, or a rule. It's an object, a thing so small, yet so deeply loved, that when it shatters, an entire identity begins to dissolve. The story is called, No Water, No Moon, and it may be the most powerful letting go of all. Sometimes, it is only when something precious is broken that something eternal is revealed. She was a nun, a quiet one, not loud in her wisdom, not dramatic in her practice. She simply served, swept, bowed, prayed. Her name was Chiono, and her greatest treasure was a water bowl. It was ordinary clay, cracked in places, softly stained by years of use, but to her it was sacred. It was hers. Each night, she would walk to the stream, kneel, fill the bowl, watched the moonlight ripple in the water. It was her ritual, her meditation, her teacher. She believed the bowl held the secret to stillness. To presence. To zen itself. But one night as she walked along the path, the bowl slipped from her hands. It struck a stone, cracked, then shattered completely. Water spilled into the dirt, the moon vanished from the surface, and for a breathless moment, her heart shattered, too. She fell to her knees, hands in the fragments, and then, as tears welled, she stopped, not because she was suppressing grief, but because something entirely different washed over her. A stillness. A silence deeper than silence. A clarity without form, and she whispered, "No water. No moon." That was it, her moment of awakening, her enlightenment. Not in a temple, not through scriptures, but in the letting go. The one thing she thought she needed. You hear that story, and at first, it feels symbolic. A metaphor, maybe, something poetic, but then you pause, and you realize, you have your own bowl, something you carry with reverence, something you believe gives you identity. Maybe a career. A relationship. A reputation. A spiritual label, even a belief about who you are. You've held it tightly, carefully, protectively. You've looked into it and seen your reflection, not realizing you mistook the container for the light itself. And when life breaks it, when the job ends, when the person leaves, when the dream dies, you panic, you feel lost, you think, the light is gone. But it was never in the bowl. It was always the moon, always the sky, always something untouched. Form, no water, no moon, is not despair. It's liberation. It's the realization that when the form dissolves, you don't lose anything essential, you return to what is beyond shape. You see, the moon is still in the sky, only the bowl broke. Only the illusion that you needed a continuo access. Truth. It changes how you see loss. You stop trying to glue broken things back together just to feel whole. You stop begging Lafido give back what slipped away. You start to see that maybe what shattered was never truly you. Now you understand why freedom feels like emptiness, why Zen monks smile at nothing, why the truest presence comes when there is nothing left to grasp, because in the absence of structure, something wild, quiet, eternal awakens. It is not dramatic, not lightning, not visions. It is the soft hum of the sky in your chest, the awareness that even without your bowl, you are whole. Ask yourself, what bowl am I still clinging to? What have I believed I cannot live without? And what if, beneath that belief, there is something wider, freer, deeper waiting? What in your life has shattered recently, and can you see it now not as punishment, but as opening? You are allowed to grieve, but also, you are allowed to be free. Sit now in the silence, close your eyes, imagine the bowl in your hands, whatever it is. See it dissolve. Gently. No struggle. No fear, and as it fades, notice that what remains is not less of you. It is more. The moon was never in the water. It was always above you, waiting, shining, and now, with nothing between you and the sky, you are ready for the next story. This one is different. It is about the storm, and the stillness inside it. It asks a question, can peace be found? Not after the rain, but within it. We walk into the drizzle now, and the master is already waiting. Peace is not a reward waiting at the end of the storm. Sometimes, it sits beside you, right in the middle of it. The sky darkens, clouds gather, slow and heavy, thunder grumbles in the far hills, the air thickens, not with fear, but with anticipation, and still, the monk brews tea, not in a kitchen, not in a temple, but under the open sky. He sits cross-legged in a clearing, small fire burning low beside him, a clay kettle resting on stones. The wind picks up, the first drops fall. He doesn't flinch. You find him there, not by accident. You've been walking, searching, trying to outrun something you can't quite name. Your feet are muddy, your mind louder than ever. You see him, calm, sipping. The rain begins to fall harder, and still, he drinks. You stop, stare, then speak without thinking. Why are you out here? It's raining. The monk looks up, smiles. Rain is just the world washing itself. Then gestures to the fire. Sit. You hesitate. Rain is uncomfortable. It ruins things, plans, clothes, moods. You've been waiting for the storm to pass so you could return to peace, but now, something in you is tired of waiting. So you sit, and you watch him pour the tea, steam rising, rain falling, fire glowing beneath it all. and something strange begins to happen. The moment stops being about the weather. It stops being about your wet robe. It stops being about the schedule you abandoned hours ago. The only thing left is this. Rain, tea, breath. Now, you begin to see how often you have made peace conditional. I'll be calm when things are calmer. I'll relax after I finish this. I'll feel joy once the chaos ends. But the chaos rarely ends. There's always another task, another crisis, another storm on the horizon, and maybe, just maybe, peace was never meant to come after the storm. Maybe peace is learning to sit in the middle of it and say, this, too, is sacred. The monk offers you a cup, warm, earthy, still steaming. You take it in your hands, the rain touches your skin, you let it, you don't shrink away, and as you sip, you realize you're still here, still breathing, still aware. The world has not ended. It is simply wet. Zen does not wait for conditions to be perfect. It does not depend on sunny skies or controlled environments. It shows up in the rain. I and the mess. I and the heat of discomfort. I and the awkwardness of life as it actually is. You remember times you've postponed presents, told yourself, I'll be grateful when I get there. I'll enjoy it once it's fixed. I'll meditate when it's quiet. But this monk sits in the drizzle, sips slowly, smiles anyway, and something in you shifts, not because the storm ended, but because your resistance did. This is the secret. Peace doesn't come when the world stops storming. Peace comes when you stop demanding it should. You look up, the trees drip rhythmically, the clouds open wider, and you remain still. For the first time in days, your mind is quiet, not because it solved something, but because it surrendered. The tea is gone, the fire smolders. The monk stands, bows gently, and says only this: the rain has finished washing me, now I can walk again. Reflection. Close your eyes for a moment, ask yourself, what storm have I been waiting to end before I allow myself to be peaceful? What if peace is already here, beneath the noise, beside the rain, within this breath? Let go of waiting, let go of postponing peace as if it lives somewhere else, right now, in this imperfect moment. It already lives within you. No need to fix. No need to fight, just sip, breathe. Be. The storm begins to pass, but that's no longer the point. You walk onward, not because the path is dry, but because your feet have remembered how to move through wet earth without complaint. The next story is quiet, more than quiet. It is unshakably still. It shows what happens when you stop trying to defend your name, your truth, your ego, and instead, you meet life with only two words: is that so? What if the truth didn't need to be defended? What if your peace didn't depend on being seen, heard, or even understood? There was once a Zen master named Hakuin. He lived in a small village, known by all, respected by many, feared by some. He was not a man of many words, but when he spoke, people listened. He taught no doctrine, offered no promises, only presence, only awareness. One day, a girl from the village found herself pregnant, ashamed, afraid. She lied when her parents demanded to know the father's name. She whispered, Hakuin. Just one word, and everything changed. The parents, furious, stormed to the temple. They shouted, accused, cursed his name. And what did Hakuin say? He looked at them, nodded once, and simply replied, is that so? No defense. No denial. No explanation. That he took the blame, accepted the burden, and when the child was born, he took the baby into his arms and began to care for it as if it were his own. The villagers turned on him, his students left, his name, so long revered, was now spat in the streets, and still Hakuin said nothing. That he fed the baby, held the baby, rocked it to sleep beneath the cherry blossoms. Not to prove anything, not as performance, just because the child was here, and it needed love. Months passed. Eventually, the girl could no longer hold the lie. She confessed the truth. The parents returned, ashamed, begged Hakuin for forgiveness, offered to take the child back, and Hakuin, holding the baby gently, handed it over. He bowed, and said once more, is that so? That's all. No triumph. No vindication. No final speech, just a quiet return to stillness. And what does that teach you? What shifts in your soul when you hear this story? Maybe this: you spend so much energy defending yourself, correcting false impressions, rewriting narratives, proving your intentions, fighting for your name, and in doing so, you create more noise, more weight, more pain. But Hakwin teaches you that it's not always your job to fix what others believe. Sometimes, the greatest strength is not retaliation, but stillness, not proving yourself, but staying rooted in truth that doesn't need an audience. What if you trusted that time will reveal all things, that your soul, when left untouched, will rise again like the moon? What if being misunderstood is not a threat, but a path to deeper freedom? There is a power in letting go of your reputation. In laying down the shield of ego. In saying, they think this, is that so? Not with sarcasm, not with bitterness, but with peace. Peace is not passive. It is powerful. It's the ability to stay calm in the face of projection, confusion, and blame, not because you're cold, but because you're rooted in something deeper than opinion. Hakwin held a baby that was not his. He accepted shame that was not his, and in doing so, he became freer than those who cursed him. He had no need to be seen as pure. He had only one need, to respond with compassion, and perhaps that's the lesson. When you let go of being right, you become light. When you stop clinging to identity, you become open. When you drop the defense, you return to grace. Reflection. Take a slow, deep breath, feel what rises, ask yourself, what accusation or judgment have I been carrying? Where have I tried to explain myself into exhaustion? What if I no longer needed to be understood to be at peace? Can you say, with true stillness, is that so? And walk forward without anger, without armor. Let your shoulders drop, your face soften. You are not your image, you are not your reputation, you are not the labels others place upon you. You are only this moment, this breath, this stillness, and it cannot be stained. The wind shifts now, the story fades, but the truth remains, and as we walk forward, we carry not the burden of name, but the freedom of being nameless. The next story is even simpler. It is about a gate, and a man who searched for enlightenment until he learned that the thing he was looking for was always right where he stood. Let us now approach the gateless gate. You walk and walk, believing there is a gate to pass through, not knowing you were always already in the other side. There was a man, a seeker. He had read all the sacred books. He had sat in temples. He had fasted, prayed, chanted. Still, he felt far. There was something just beyond his reach, some final truth, some hidden gate. So he set out to find it, the gate to awakening. The path to freedom. He believed it must exist somewhere, behind a mountain, inside a monastery, carved into the silence of some enlightened master's voice. He traveled for years. Each teacher offered something, a riddle, a meditation, a silence too deep for words, but still, he felt outside the truth, outside the peace. He imagined it, a great wooden gate. Or golden, maybe or hidden in clouds, something grand, something real. A place where, once passed through, everything would make sense. And no more doubt. And no more searching. One day, an old monk listened patiently as the seeker poured out his longing. The monk smiled. Didn't interrupt, and when the seeker finished, the monk bowed and said, "The gate you are searching for does not exist." The seeker blinked, confused, frustrated, "But I feel it. I feel I'm close, that I'm just outside it." The monk replied, "You are inside it, you always were, there is no gate." And then he walked away. The seeker stood alone, beneath the same sky, the same air. Nothing had changed, but something cracked open in him. A long silence filled the space where the chase had been, and suddenly, he saw that he had imagined the path as a climb, the truth as a destination, the awakening as an arrival, but there was no arrival, only this breath, this dirt. This light through the trees. He hadn't missed it. He had been standing in it whole time. The gateless gate is one of Zen's deepest koans, and its meaning isn't found by solving it. It's found when you stop trying to solve anything at all, because awakening is not elsewhere. It's here, now. It's not something you earn after enough effort. It's something you remember when the effort drops away. Think of how long you've walked, all the books, all the self-improvement, all the striving, all in search of better, more awakened, more peaceful. And maybe it helped, maybe it pointed the way, but at some point you have to stop walking and look down, see the gate you imagined is the space you're already in. That's the paradox of awakening. You can't enter what you already are, you can't find what was never lost. The mind hates this. It wants progress. It wants reward. It wants a moment to say, "Now I am enlightened." But the heart just wants stillness, the soul just wants to rest, not in some distant temple, but in this moment exactly as it is. And so you sit that I in the middle of your day, that I in the middle of your breath, that I in the middle of nothing special. And you realize, this is it, not because it's perfect, not because everything's solved, but because you are no longer pushing forward against the current of now. You let go of the image of a gate, out of a peak, out of a thunderous realization, and in that soft surrender, a deeper truth appears. The path is not a line, that it is a circle that brings you back to where you started. But finally, you can see it. That reflection, let this be your pause, let this be the moment you let go of arriving. Ask yourself, what am I still chasing? Believing it exists beyond now. What if everything I seek is already within me? You do not need to change yourself to be whole, you only need to remember what was true before the chase began. The gate does not swing open, that it dissolves, because there is nothing to pass through, only something to release. That an O gate, that an O seeker, that an O destination, just you, breathing, just this, always this, and now, you walk with softer steps. Not toward anything, but with everything. That no need to grasp, no need to run, you are home, you always were. The next story is not about a monk, not about a teacher, not even about a person, that it's about a wild fox, and a man cursed not for his actions, but for the way he believed. That we enter now the tale of the wild fox koan. There are prisons built not of iron, but of certainty, and sometimes, to be free, you must stop trying to be right. A monk once asked a Zen master, does an enlightened person fall under the law of cause and effect? The master answered simply, no, and in that moment, the monk was cursed. For 500 lifetimes, he was reborn as a fox. This is how the story begins, that he was not evil, not unwise, that he was a sincere practitioner, but when he heard that no, he held on to it, clung to it as truth, turned it into doctrine, and because of that clinging, he lost his human form, not as punishment, not by divine judgment, but because belief, when mistaken for truth, becomes a chain. Even the most spiritual belief. Now a fox, he wandered the mountains. A ghost, a whisper of fur in the wind, still practicing, still watching temples from afar, until, one day, he approached a teacher again, not in the form of a man, but in the twilight form between worlds, and he asked once more, is it true that the enlightened fall outside the law of cause and effect? The master replied, they do not ignore it, they see it clearly, but they are not bound by it. And in that moment the fox dropped dead, free, released, and once again reborn as a monk. Strange story, isn't it? A fox, a curse, a riddle about karma, but beneath the image is something tender and piercing, the mind's obsession with being right. That you've done this, haven't you? Clung to an idea, a belief, a principle, even a spiritual truth. You thought it gave you safety, clarity, control. This is how the universe works. This is what awakening means. This is what's good, what's bad, what's true. But slowly, what began as insight became armor, and now, you wear it like a badge, but it's heavy. So heavy. The fox's curse was not a punishment from the gods. It was the natural result of mistaking certainty for awakening. That he wanted truth to be absolute, clean, divorced from contradiction. But Zen doesn't work like that, life doesn't work like that. Enlightenment isn't a lupulito avoid cause and effect. That it's the awareness of cause and effect without getting trapped in it. You feel the waves, but you are no longer tossed. You still respond, but you are no longer entangled. The fox teaches you to release the need to grasp, even to grasp, truth. Because when you cling too tight to being correct, you miss what is alive. You build mental temples while the wind dances outside, waiting for you to come home. There is a sacred humility in saying, I don't know. Not from ignorance, but from reverence, from understanding that truth is not an object to possess, but a river to join, and rivers change. You remember moments when you thought you knew, when you judged someone for doing it wrong, when you judged yourself for falling short of your own ideal, and now, with quiet tears, you see, even those thoughts were just clouds, and behind them, the sky remains. The fox was never evil. He was just caught in the mind's beautiful, dangerous trap, wanting the world to fit into perfect lines. But life is not made of lines. It's made of circles, spirals, waves. It doesn't need to make sense. It only needs to be met. Reflection breathes slowly, ask yourself, where have I clung to an idea so tightly that it began to hurt? What beliefs am I still defending, not out of clarity, but out of fear? What if you don't need to be right? What if your soul doesn't care about winning an argument with the world? What if truth is what remains when all beliefs have been lovingly set down? Now, imagine a fox, not wild with hunger, but still, quiet, resting in moonlight, his eyes soft, his spirit free, not because he found the answer, but because he released the question. This is what Zen whispers: you are not here to explain the mystery, you are here to live it. And now, we walk again. To a story so brief and so strange that it cracks open something eternal. A master raises a finger, just one dot, and with that simple gesture, a boy awakens. Truth does not always arrive in sentences. Sometimes, it arrives in silence. Or in a single, unshakable gesture. There was once a young boy who lived at the temple. He wasn't a student, not formally. He swept the grounds, served the tea, fed the birds. He watched the monks, listened to the wind, felt the silence that echoed through the halls, and he noticed something. Each time someone asked the master about enlightenment, the master never gave long sermons. He never quoted scripture, never offered clever answers. Instead, he simply raised one finger, just that. No explanation. The boy was curious, and one day, alone in the courtyard, he mimicked it. He stood before another monk who asked playfully, "Boy, what is the way?" And the boy, without hesitation, raised his finger. The monk smiled. Word reached the master. Later that day, the master summoned the boy. They stood in silence. Then, the master asked, "What is the way?" The boy smiled, proud, and raised his finger. Without a word, the master pulled out a small blade, and cut off the boy's finger. The boy screamed, pain shot through his body. He began to run, tears blinding him, but the master called out firmly, "Stop." The boy froze, turned, and the master asked again, "What is the way?" In reflex, the boy began to raise his hand, but the finger was no longer there. In that shock, in that instant between reaction and emptiness, his mind split open, and in the space where habit had lived, something wild and wordless awakened. He saw it. He became it. The story sounds violent, harsh, almost unbearable, and yet, Zen is not always gentle, because sometimes, only the sharpness of now can cut through illusion. The master's act was not cruelty. It was compassion beyond comfort. He saw the boy turning the finger into a symbol, a ritual, a performance. He saw the boy beginning to believe that a gesture was the truth. But truth cannot be copied, truth cannot be posed. It must believed. You reflect, what fingers have I raised, what gestures have I copied, thinking they were the thing itself? Have I turned meditation into a routine, turned stillness into a performance? Have I begun to worship the form of spirituality instead of its freedom? Zen does not care how eloquently you speak. It doesn't reward clever metaphors or flawless postures. It looks beyond all that, to see if you've touched emptiness, not the kind that is void, but the kind that is full because it no longer needs to grasp. The boy awakened not because he lost a finger, but because, in the moment of loss, he lost the copy and met the real. He lost the echo and found the source. He lost the symbol and touched the sky. Truth doesn't need repetition. It doesn't live in the hand. It lives in the gap, the sudden pause, the cut, the space between gestures where silence roars. Think of your own life, all the spiritual things you've done, the practices, the rituals, the knowledge you've collected. What if, today, you set them all down, not forever, just for now? What remains? Who are you without your finger raised? Can you meet truth with no shield, no symbol, no script? Reflection. Breathe, sit with this sharpness, not fearfully, but openly. Ask, what spiritual patterns am I repeating without presence? What gestures am I mimicking without feeling? What if awakening isn't something to display, but something that happens when display ends? No finger. No sound. No posture, only presence, only the vastness that has always waited beneath the performance. The boy grew up. He became a great master, but he never raised a finger to answer a question. He only smiled, and pointed, instead, to the space within. The next story is about a bell. But not the kind you strike with metal. It is a bell that rings when the heart becomes still. It is called, the sound of one hand clapping. There are questions that don't seek answers, only silence, only the falling away of the one who asked that a student once came to the master that he bowed deeply, sat with reverence, and said, "Please, show me the truth." The master nodded, then gave him a task: "Go, meditate until you hear the sound of one hand clapping." That was all. The student was confused, but determined that he sat under trees, sat in caves, sat beside rivers, listening, straining his ears, that he clapped his own hand against the air, that he clapped it against stone, against leaves, that he shook it, stared at it, nothing. Days turned to weeks, that he grew frustrated, obsessed. What is the sound of one hand clapping? He asked others, asked books, asked dreams. No answer, just silence. But one night, utterly exhausted, he gave up. He dropped the question, dropped the effort, dropped even the idea of seeking. He sat beneath a moonless sky. No thought. No grasping, only breath, only being, and in that space, something happened that he did not hear it, but the whole world suddenly rang, not with sound, but with clarity, stillness, awareness. The wind brushed his cheek, the stars, though unseen, seemed to lean closer. His heart stopped questioning. That he understood: there is no sound, there is no hand, there is no clapping. Only presence, only now. The koan is not a riddle to be solved. It's a mirror, designed to reflect the limits of the logical mind. To exhaust your intellect until it breaks open and you fall into silence. That's where Zen begins, not in knowing, but in unknowing. That we live in duality, left and right, sound and silence, yes and no, you and me, but Zen invites us beyond opposites, beyond the need to name. To the place where one hand is not half a gesture, but wholeness itself. You begin to see how many things in life you've approached with two hands, grasping, needing, holding both sides, right and wrong, past and future, self and other, but one hand just rests, just opens. That it doesn't seek to complete anything. That it simply is, and that is enough. Imagine yourself now, sitting quietly, palm open, not waiting for an answer, not straining for a sound, just being, letting the question fall away, letting even the you who asked it dissolve, and in that emptiness, everything returns. That reflection, let the silence deepen. Ask, what question am I still chasing? What sound am I still trying to hear? Instead of becoming still and auto-realize it was never missing. What if the answer isn't hidden, but simply irrelevant? You do not need to know, you only need to release the one who is always trying to know. Let go, let stillness teach you what words never could. When you can sit open-handed, without demand, you will know the sound of one hand clapping, not with your ears, but with your soul. We now reach a story of simplicity and contradiction. A monk burns a statue of the Buddha warm himself on a cold night. A scandal. A sacrilege, but also a liberation. Let us enter, burning the Buddha. What do you Tao Hen? The thing you worship becomes the very thing that keeps you from truth. It was a cold night, the wind howled through the temple walls, frost crept into the corners of the hall like hungry fingers. A monk sat in stillness, wrapped in a thin robe, shivering. No fire. No warmth. No distraction, only a large wooden statue of the Buddha watching over the room, ornate, carved with care, gold paint flaking from its divine smile. The monk stood, walked slowly toward it, and without hesitation, he broke it into pieces. He lit a fire, and warmed his hands. The next morning, the head monk arrived, his face froze in horror. What have you done? He cried. You burned the Buddha. The monk, calmly rubbing his hands by the fire, replied, I was just trying to warm myself. Now that it's burned, can you help me find the Buddha's bones? Silence, thick and eternal, because in that moment, the teacher saw it. The monk hadn't burned truth. He had burned the form, the symbol, the image, the object that had once pointed to the sacred, but had become, itself, a prison. He knew, if clinging to a statue keeps you from warmth, then that statue is no longer holy. If devotion to a form makes you ignore the need of the living, breathing moment, then it is time to set it down. This story shocks, offends, rattles the conditioned mind. How could one burn what is sacred? But Zen asks a different question. What makes something sacred? Is it the shape, the material, the tradition, or is it the way it awakens something real within you? And if it no longer awakens, if it becomes stale, rigid, cold, can you release it, even if it wears a holy name? You reflect, what Buddhas have you built, not out of wood, but out of belief, routine, identity? What rituals do you follow out of habit, not heart? What spiritual forms do you protect even as they suffocate your growth? Sometimes, the bravest thing is not to bow, but to burn, not from anger, not from disrespect, but from love for what is real. The monk didn't desecrate the Buddha, that he honored the living truth the Buddha pointed to. That attachment, even to spirituality, can become another chain. That you've done this, haven't you? Held on to teachings long after they stopped serving you, clung to practices out of fear of letting go. Believed that questioning was betrayal, but Zen reminds you, burning is not the end. It's the beginning. It's what remains after illusion turns to ash. The fire is not to destroy. It is to purify. To return Yudo, the truth behind the symbol. To the warmth beneath the wood. To the essence beyond the form. Reflection. Close your eyes, visualize your own statue, not a literal one, but something you revere, cling to. Fear losing. A belief. A title. A practice. A version of yourself. Ask, is it still alive for me, or am I protecting its memory instead of living its truth? What if letting it burn could warm me again? Breathe, watch it turn to flame, and as it fades, notice the heat on your hands, the space in your chest. That's truth, not the statue, but the fire it made possible. And when someone asks you, why did you let it go? You can smile gently and say, to feel the warmth again. From here, we walk lighter, freer. We've burned form, now we look inward. To the self we've protected, the self we've hidden behind words, and we ask, who is the one hearing this story? Let us enter the final steps, toward the mirror that reflects nothing but presence. Who are you? Before your name, before the thoughts, before the mirror reflects any form at all, there is an old koan, simple and eternal. A master asked his students, who is hearing this sound? And then said nothing else. No explanation. No instructions, only that question, reverberating through the walls of the temple, echoing inside each student's mind. Who is hearing this? Not what is the sound, not where is it coming from, but who is the one aware of it? When you first hear this, the mind responds automatically, it's me. I'm hearing. But the koan doesn't stop there. It keeps pressing. Who is me? Where is this located? What shape is it? What sound does it make? And if you look inward, truly look, you find something strange. You don't find anyone, only awareness, only the knowing. Like light with no source, like wind that cannot be held. There is hearing, but no clear hearer. There is thinking, but no thinker. There is breath, but no one controlling it. Sit with that, let it unravel you. You've spent a lifetime building the idea of yourself. A name. A role. A story, but underneath all of it, who's there? Who is watching your thoughts without thinking them? Who notices your sadness without being consumed by it? Who hears these words as they fall like gentle rain into your consciousness? This is not a riddle. It's not to be solved. It's to be sat with, until the one who is asking no longer needs to ask, until the self that seeks melts into silence. In deep meditation, you may come close, the body dissolves, the thoughts become clouds, and what remains is a kind of quiet that holds everything without being anything. You don't disappear, but the idea of you loses its edges. And in that edgeless space, peace arrives unannounced. The question is not meant to frustrate. It's meant to awaken. To loosen the grip on the I. You defend, manage, protect, and constantly explain. Who is hearing this, asks you to step back until there's nothing left. Step back from, and in that place, you're not lost. You're found in the field that existed before the first thought, found in the silence that doesn't need your name. You look at a tree, it's just there. You look at the sky, vast and clear. No one says, I am sky. No one says, I am the tree. And yet, you are both, you are none, you are the one aware of both, and yet, even that is not quite true. You are the awareness itself. Let that sink in. There is no you hearing this story, there is only hearing. There is no you understanding this message, there is only understanding. There is no you having a body, there is only body appearance in awareness. And this is not to deny your humanness, not to reject your life, but to finally stop trying to locate the soul like a lost object in space, because the soul isn't something you have. It's what you are. Reflection now, sit gently, ask, not from mind, but from stillness, who is hearing this? Do not answer, just remain, let the question become a doorway, not to something else, but to what was always here. No story, no striving, no separation, only presence, and that, perhaps more than any story, is Zen, not a concept, not a religion, but a returning to the soundless sound of who you are before anything is named. That we have walked far, not in miles, but in stillness, from tea in the rain to fingers cut, to Buddhas burned, to wild foxes, to gates that never existed, to questions that dissolve the questioner. But there is one last story. It is about death, and more than death, about freedom, not in escaping life, but in embracing its final bow with open hands. Let us enter, the last words of the Master. We now arrive at the final gate, not a gate to be passed through, but one to be sat beside, with calm breath and open hands. At the end, you do not take anything with you, except how deeply you were here. The Master was dying, the students gathered around him, their robes still, eyes full of grief and reverence. They had learned from him for years, through silence, through stories, through the soft power of presence. Now, they waited for one last teaching point, one final word of wisdom before the Master let go the body that had carried so much stillness. One of them leaned close. Master, what are your final words? The Master opened his eyes, smiled gently, and whispered, I don't want to go. Then, he closed his eyes, and died. Silence, long and raw. Some students were shocked, some confused, some quietly weeping, but one of them, the youngest, began to smile, not mockingly, not with detachment, but with deep, unshakable understanding. This, too, was the Master's teaching, perhaps the most important one of all, because he had spent a lifetime showing them how to live, but in his last breath, he showed them how to be human. There was no pretending. No heroic detachment. No empty spiritual performance, just honesty, just presence with what is, even now, even at the end. I don't want to go. Not because he was afraid, not because he clung, but because he loved being here. He loved the rain on the tiles, the steam rising from tea, the way students would furrow their brows before a koan cracked them open. That he was here, fully, and so of course, he didn't want to go. You might think awakening means you feel nothing, want nothing, fear nothing. But real awakening isn't emptiness like a void. It's fullness so complete you cry when you have to leave it, and when death comes, you don't fight it, but you also don't rush to greet it. You meet it like you met the rain, like you met your breath, fully, gently, with both grief and grace. That's the true teaching, that being spiritual doesn't mean floating above life. It means falling so deeply into it that even goodbye becomes sacred. You reflect, how many moments have I rushed past, how many people have I not truly seen, how many mornings have I greeted like burdens instead of miracles. The Master's last words were not about death, they were about love, about presence so deep that even loss becomes part of the path, even endings become teachers. And now, as you sit here, breathing, still alive, you feel it, this life, this gift, this fleeting, tender dream, and you whisper, not in fear, but in gratitude, I don't want to go either. Reflection. Breathe in, feel your body, notice the quiet details of this moment, the way the air rests on your skin, the stillness between heartbeats. Let your eyes close, let time pause, and ask, if I knew this moment was my last, would I be here more fully? What am I waiting for before I finally wake up to what's already here? Let presence deepen, let love deepen, let your life be lived so fully that even the end feels complete. The Master left, but he didn't vanish. He became the wind, the floorboards creaking, the question echoing. That he became this story, and now, you are the student, carrying the silence forward. We've reached the end of the path, but not the end of you, only the end of forgetting. Now you remember, not through answers, but through presence, not through belief, but through being. And as the sun rises this still morning, you breathe, you bow, and you whisper, thank you.